Hi, it's Sonia. Welcome back to my art YouTube channel. Today I thought I would do a review of, I'm probably going to mispronounce all this, but Kissho Gansai watercolours, because this is not sponsored or gifted. This is a set of 72 colours that I purchased off Amazon because I'd had my eye on them and they'd come down in price. I'm not going to open the box because they're going to go everywhere, but I'm going to speed up a swatching video. I'm going to speed up some processes and talk over them. And yeah, I'll give you my sort of conclusions at the end. I'm going to be very clear. I'm not a technical expert in these types of watercolors or in watercolor in general. I'm very much these days mixed media. But I have got some other sets. Maybe I will do another video on sort of just general more about how I use Japanese watercolors in my work and mixed media work. This is just more of my findings with this set, because yeah, I mean, let's be honest, they're sort of reasonable, I guess, compared to some expensive sets of watercolors. But at the same time, especially if you go for a large set like this, there is, they do cost a bit of, a fair bit of money. So just quickly though, I'm not going to get too technical, but from what my very basic understanding of just looking on the internet, and it would seem to make sense for how I've been finding them, what is the difference in terms of Western versus Gansai or Japanese watercolors? Basically, it seems to come down primarily to the binder used. In Western watercolors, there is gum arabic, which is a natural gum apparently consisting of the hardened sap from the acacia tree. Have I pronounced that right? With Gansai, they traditionally used animal glue, but most modern ones use glucose in terms of a form of a binder, be it beeswax, glue, starch, etc., as the binding agent. And this gives it, which is, before I even knew all this, the thing that I first observed and loved about them was you do get a glossier finish. And so, it's very personal preference, isn't it, when it comes to sort of more water soluble paints. But I like them a lot. I didn't at first. When I first used them, I think first got a set. I think the Kuretake ones were on sale. This is a good few years ago now. It's like 5 years ago. And yeah, I was like, oh, what's this? Because you don't again have the sort of, doesn't come with a mixing palette. But apparently they're not meant to be mixed. So once I sort of got my head around how I wanted to use them in my work, I really sort of fell in love with them in a way. The Gansai are much more vibrant and more opaque, drying with as it says, a glossy finish. And apparently they were sort of more formulated to work on Japanese papers anyway. So yeah, that's my sort of like very brief, what are they? And for myself, I've really grown to love using them, which is why I've invested in this larger set, because I've talked about this before. I know you could be probably very skilled with color and a minimalist and just have have a few watercolors and mix a whole range. I can mix colors, but how I like to work, which is fast, loose, I like vibrant. I love these pans. I like the fact that I'm not thinking about mixing. I'm just grabbing a big brush. I like the fact these are big pans in general as well with Japanese watercolors. And you can just get really in there. And yeah, I'm going to show you as well how I like to use them. Okay, so this is the swatching section. It comes in two layers that are basically on top of one another. The box is, it's a box. It's not particularly, it's fairly strong, but it's not, I can see it's a little bit flimsy. It's not like a tin or anything. But yeah, no, it's nice to have it layered in such a way. I don't think it will take up much space. I can definitely fit it into a drawer. I'm working in my sort of, this is a journal. It's just lined paper. It's not at all watercolor paper or thick paper, but I am using it to swatch out new mediums when I get them, because I just kind of like to use it in this way. And for myself, I'm just interested. I'm looking at the sheet. It does come with a sort of a chart, as it were, but it's in Japanese, so I have no idea what the colours are or what it's saying. So for my purposes, I just wanted to lay them out in the order that they're at, working from left to right. I just end up doing sort of like blobs of quite saturated colour. I just wanted to see the colours, compare them, see which ones I'm particularly drawn to. And yeah, it was also interesting. You'll see there's certain times I'm like, oh, that colour looks very similar. And I do sort of almost blob like there. That green there looked very similar to an earlier green. There are slight differences, to be fair, but yeah, some of the colours in the 72 set, there's a few that are a bit similar in terms of greens and sort of more these sort of ochres, really, ochre yellows. There's a nice, why I really like the set is also because of the metallics. I really love metallic watercolours. I didn't used to, but I do now. And the neons, obviously that neon section there is really cool for me. So yeah, I was happy with this. I was really pleased with this set of colours. I do have a Kuretake, I can't remember how many there are now. I will compare in another video, but I think it's like, is it 36, 40 something? So yeah, I don't by any means think, unless you're a huge sort of maximalist into colour, well, I'm sort of a maximalist with colour, that you don't obviously need a giant set, but it is interesting that actually they weren't sort of, as it were, originally produced to be mixed. So from that point of view, I do think there's perhaps a little bit more benefit in having a bigger range in this sort of type of watercolour. The pans, as you can see, these are much nice large pans. They are fairly shallow. So another reason I purchased this set is actually I do get through. I've got a very old set of, my first ever set is basically, you may have seen in other videos, I use the empty pans now to add other tubes of watercolour and gouache to. So I'm not sure, even though the paints are cheap, you don't get a huge quantity necessarily because it's quite shallow, even though, they look quite big. But the advantage, as I stated at the beginning of the video, is that you can get big mop brushes in there. So I love that. That works for me. And here, so this is a sped up process video. Basically, what I wanted to show is that, I wanted to test this set out in this sketchbook to start with. This is how I like to work anyway. Sometimes I have pages that I come and go from. This has I think it's a gouache background, sort of watered down, and then I've drawn the vase in, and I was like, let's add some flowers to this and see how these paints react on top of another medium, and just have a play here. And yeah, they are so I guess this is so personal. Everyone has to find their way of like how they like to use their paints. And I like to use them in this very saturated and intense way, because I love the fact that you've got this sort of opacity and you can go, even though that's oil pastel. No, it's not. Yes, it is oil pastel. It's Pentel oil pastels. So you can get the wax resist if you go very watery, but at the same time, I can get a really saturated sort of opaque colour with them as well. In these sort of drawings, in this sort of loose still life sketchbook, I really also like to play about with colour. So I sort of had a vase of flowers as inspiration, but I've completely changed up the flowers. I was looking at them just to get sort of an idea, a basic outline. But in real life, those flowers are orange, and I've decided, for the benefit of this piece, to play around with the purples. And obviously, I really love that mint green, so just going in with the mint green. You still get, the other nice thing about them is if you use them in a watery way and you let them bleed into each other, you do get beautiful sort of that sort of blooms out, and the sort of the mingling of the colours. So I love playing about with that. Obviously more on plain watercolour paper. And then I think I come in with another. I thought I would have a go at a jug when in doubt. I like to draw ceramics. I can basically draw, we can all sort of draw them from our heads now. It's also a really good way of testing. I wanted to play around with a bit of the metallic paint and sort of layering this paint up. but not. I didn't let. There wasn't sort of like glazing. I didn't let the layers dry. It was very much. I very much wanted to show here how I work with them, and to check out for me if they were going to fit into my, to this sketchbook, because yeah, I just like to. I'm not worried about accidents. I like almost to have that kind of, I'm not trying to get beautifully blended areas or to make that jug look real or realistic. This is, I think, is it more of an illustrator? I don't know what you'd call it really. I'm just wanting to just play about with sort of I guess a more illustrative, naive style. So it's probably tricky. I think you can just see the glimmer of it, but that, for my purposes, the metallics went on really nicely. I got that sheen that will be quite pleasurable when you you turn over the page of your work to see it. Okay, then I wanted to go into this abstract sketchbook. Now, I was just thinking about this because on my kitchen wall, one of the kids also, I let them use my older sets of Japanese watercolour. And on very cheap, even on cheap drawing paper for kids, we've got a piece up, and this is also good in terms of light fastness. Look, I have not got any, technical reports or proper sort of statistical analysis of this. All I know, I think someone did write in the comments once that apparently they are pretty high. They do have they are light fast, fairly light fast. Having had my son's youngest picture on the wall, it's dated 2022, they seem to be holding up pretty well, and that kitchen wall gets a lot of sun. So from that point of view, I'm pretty impressed with these. And I love how on the paper, this sort of cheaper paper, thinner paper, I love the wrinkliness of it. I say this because as my kids' artwork fell off the floor, and I was like, oh, it's so wrinkled and buckled, and just like that tactility. If you like that sort of, I haven't got one nearby, I'd like crinkle it for you. But I know this paper in this sketchbook will also, I'll show you at the end actually. I'm going to go through some of the work very quickly at the end when it's dry, because I do think it's useful to see work when a day later. But I know I'm going to get a pleasing sort of. I don't mind buckling in my sketchbook for this sort of loose exploratory work. So here I just wanted to test out some of the random colours, looking at letting them bleed into each other, trying out even more saturated marks on top of obviously not hugely wet areas, but slightly wetted areas. I could also come back and then go on top later. But yep, I finished that piece. I'm now on to, I think this is the last section of my process. I can see, the sun's coming. It's not the best in terms of, obviously, light on my desk. But I wanted to show and I wanted to test for myself what this particular set of watercolour were like on 300 GSM watercolour paper. Not top quality. This is my favourite sort of Canson, I guess it's student quality, but I find it, it's 300 GSM, it holds up pretty well. The other thing you can do, which I do from time to time, is you can make your own watercolour blocks. This one isn't, I haven't made this one into a block, so there is a bit of buckling, but there's videos on this on YouTube. It's really, it's quite, I do this from time to time because I found out how to do it, and it when you do make your own blocks, it's quite good. It obviously reduces so much buckling with watercolour. This is it's kind of an imaginary landscape scene. I guess I'm sort of putting together from my head some references, places, I don't know, I was trying to sort of, when you do draw a lot of landscapes, like especially observationally, I guess you get sort of vistas in your mind, be it from, I feel like it's a bit of an amalgamation of sort of like the flat sort of vista of where I sort of grew up, like in Essex, where I was born and grew up. It was very flat, and then at the same time I've sort of added, I feel like the colours I've gone for that sort of golden, some of the sort of goldeny greens of like California when it's very sort of dried out in summer. But yeah, so I love, another reason I love this sort of Gansai watercolours, I did get into really making a series on paper just for fun, sort of like imaginary landscapes, and I just loved how the sort of atmosphere I could build up by letting the accidents, like really not trying to, for myself, being fairly minimal in terms of letting the paint sort of move into sort of other wet areas and not worrying that I've, that it would cause complete mayhem in terms of the composition in some ways and the readability of the piece. So yeah, no, I'm just looking at it now. I'm going to bring it up and I'll film on my desk in a minute to show all these works and yeah, to give my final conclusions. But overall, I was really happy with this. This is something I purchased that I've been thinking about, to be honest with you, for a long time. I feel, in terms of watercolours, if I'm going to use watercolours especially my mixed media work, I just gravitate to sort of the Gansai ones. And also, I've just also invested in some, what's it called? Daniel Smith, was it absorbent ground medium, so that you could prepare. My idea is also, can I take watercolours and gouache onto canvas and even sort of birch panels? So, like, to prepare some canvases and sort of more harder boards for this, just to experiment and see another way of using these materials in final pieces. But yeah, so then I get it to, what am I doing here? Oh, I had a bit I just wanted to add the metallic. I don't know why, maybe it's sort of like the golden field sort of vibe I wanted to add in at the end. Yeah, so I'm going to leave. This is the end of this sort of sped up process section. And yeah, I will just quickly review some of this work and also another sketchbook spread that I shared on Patreon, which is a bit of Japanese watercolour as well, just to show. Okay, so yeah, just to conclude, this is my swatching book, and you can see the paper. I feel like it's got that lovely, I kind of like that sound, but it's thin, it's just sort of, from lined paper. Yet the other reason I like these watercolours is if you use them thickly, I think you can personally work on all types of paper with them, if you're not precious. And I don't know if I'm able to sort of get the sheen from the metallics, but you've got a lovely sheen. They actually don't look that glossy, I would say. They're definitely very vibrant, and you can see sort of the opacity. I wouldn't say these are terribly glossy though on this paper personally. But anyway, that's my swatching, all dried. Then I wanted to quickly show a couple of spreads from this sketchbook. I got, before I used these are my very old, some very old Japanese watercolours. Also, to be fair, there's some Cotman watercolours and even gouache mixed into these little sketches. But I just had fun. Like, I know this is Japanese watercolour, that black, and I like how it reacts on this mixed media paper. And yeah, this was a fun exercise in getting loose using a reference book, an art book as a reference, but trying to deliberately just look at composition, abstract. And I did make a Patreon process video on this. But I love, by keeping it very sort of, not trying to overdo it. I'm not going to come in again. I'm going to leave it because I really like the way the colours sort of spread out and bleed into each other, sort of the happy accidents that we as artists all talk about. Then let's have a look at this sketchbook now. It's dried. So this is the sketchbook I was talking about, the abstract one with cheap plain paper. It wasn't terribly expensive. It's not thick drawing paper by any means. So you do get, I don't know if you can see that, look how, that's how buckled it is. But I rather like that. It's such some people are like, but it's not, don't use good quality paper. But if you're into experimental art and you're happy, this actually has dried rather nicely. I wouldn't, yeah, I kind of like, it's just interesting because once you let them, if you're working sort of wet on wet, I like how the lack of control. So that's that one. And then finally, let's have a look at, so okay, this is the 300 GSM watercolour pad. As I say, I have made blocks before. This one is not in any block format. I just wanted to, so you've got a fair bit of warping. However, I just wanted to see what the paint was like on it. And it's dried now. And I deliberately used these metallic ones in the sky and on the field. And yeah, I'm pleased with these paints. They seem, I might do a comparison with my other ones and just show a bit more of how I like to work with them in more of a mixed, sort of getting, I don't know, more mixed media as well and more saturated. But they seem to be very comparable to my Kuretake set. If anyone has any information that's different, please let me know. But yeah, I really, for example, my nails are terrible, I need to redo them. But I like how you've got, this is all because I used it very loosely and wet, all these sort of accidental bits. Now what I did come over with in terms of mixed media is what you could do is you've got the bits you want to keep, but then now having laid this down, this is a rather nice base for acrylic wash on the top, oil pastel. You could go mixed media on top of these pieces as well and just have fun. All right, that's it for me on reviewing this set of, is it 70 or 72? Can't remember now. Kissho Gansai watercolours. Thank you for watching my video. Yeah, and that's it for me. See you next time. Bye.